So, hello, Jamie, welcome.
Hi,
Hi, where are you coming from today?
I am in Frome in Somerset.
Lovely. And thank you so much for joining us for the first of our creative conversations for Physical Fest. It's a pleasure to have you here because you have been a big part of Physical Fest over the years. And I was trying to remember when you first came, and I think it was 2013 with Beating McEnroe.
Yeah.
And then you've been back many years with beautiful shows and workshops, and you've got a great following with Physical Fest. So it's great to speak to you.
Oh, I just got a kind of shiver through my body. Just, because actually, the Beating McEnroe only really happened because we talked to each other in the rain. And I think I said to you, I'm thinking of making a solo show. And you went, oh yeah, you should totally do that. And I felt like because I'd said it out loud to you, then I had to do it.
Yeah.
And then you gave me a space to try it out in front of an audience. And it was, the Liverpool audience is pretty extraordinary. Physical Fest audience, wow.
Yeah, we've missed it a lot. It feels like another lifetime away, that, those times, and that, just remembering what that is like, that feeling of like, which I think it was different in the festival. It wasn't like a normal just show. It was like the energy was amazing, wasn't it? And lots of people just wanting it to be brilliant and wanting it to work and enjoying it. And yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah, and I guess, I think I often kind of teach that in workshops where I think artists sometimes come onto a stage and they're so full of like, oh, what are the audience going to think about my stuff? And with Physical Fest, it was so clear that the audience are all there leaning forward going, come on, we want it to be brilliant.
Yeah.
It's really special.
Yeah, it's nice to remember that. And so these conversations came about from, we did chats with lots of people and people involved with the festival, local artists, and about what they wanted to see and hear. And lots of people talked about wanting to hear about artists' processes and creative processes. And it was interesting because I was thinking about that is this kind of mystery of like, oh, they've got it, they know how to do it. And obviously, it's something that they were kind of interested in hearing about. So I thought it'd be nice to speak to people that we've known and loved over the years that have been part of the festival and just open that conversation up and see what happens, I guess, in terms of, I'm realizing it's quite a strange time to be talking about that because our processes and times and everything has changed a lot, obviously, over the past year. But can you talk a little bit about your creative process?
Yeah. Thank you. I was really looking forward to talking to you about it because I guess like at the moment I'm helping different people make shows, and so there's a kind of continual question around what is my process. And I don't know if I have a fixed process, but I think I have. I read a book that is absolutely awesome called A Director Prepares by Anne Bogart. And I think in that book, she talks about 3 stages of making a show. And I think I've just nicked it. And I think the first stage is just a kind of vomiting of like anything that feels interesting to you at this point in your life. And you might have a specific subject, and it might be all the stuff that comes up. And then the second stage is kind of noticing from all your vomit, like what are the bits that feel like they live together. And then your third stage is about starting to put those bits together. Mm-hmm. But like having said that, like thinking about beating McEnroe, at that point, you know, I was making theatre with other people, and often as a performer or actor or director sometimes. And then I was working as a hospital clown, and beating McEnroe kind of came out of a question, a very live question inside me, which was, if I go into a hospital and facilitate a play for a child, they, you know, we experience kind of miracles all the time where a granddad would run off after you and kind of say, wow, my child hasn't got out of bed for 6 months and they just got out of bed and played with you. And I was curious whether as adults we lose that desire to play, or whether it's something innate and deep inside us. So one of my kind of questions was, can I create an environment where I invite adults to play? Mm-hmm. And then I saw Dr. Brown in Edinburgh, and he was the first clown from the Philippe Gaulier school who I actually saw doing what Gaulier taught us, and it actually working with an audience. But he did lots of audience participation, and it made me really uncomfortable, because and he totally fessed up to it. You know, when I talked to him afterwards, he was like, yeah, I bully the audience quite a lot. And he told me to come and see his kids show, because he said, come and see my kids show, because I don't bully people in that. and he was quite ashamed of the bullying. But anyway, he was kind of playing to a really raucous, often drunk comedy crowd. But I just wondered, could I create an environment where I invited grown-ups to play and not bully people? and then I remembered, I had this strong memory of this kind of obsession with Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe. And I remembered me and my brother watching the Wimbledon final dressed up as Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe. And I was like, I hadn't thought about that for 30 years. And then I got a mate Ellie Griffiths, who is a total superstar. And she, at the time, she was also a hospital clown. And I said to her, when I make theatre, I get all serious and heavy, and I want it to be really good. But when I work in the hospital, I'm really light and playful. So could you come and kick me up the arse whenever I get too heavy and serious? And can we just play together? And so we started to research, explore, and very early on, we were making each other laugh a lot. I think one early idea with beating McEnroe was that I was coming up with all sorts of pretentious French pseudonyms. So the idea was that I was like a French artist who really, there was something about like joyfully embracing pretentiousness and art and being an artist. And so the first, work in progress was absolutely bonkers. And then it moved on. Does that gives a sense of something, right?
yeah, totally. It's interesting for me to hear that, that process. And going back to that Anne Bogart book, I have a strong memory of reading that in a particular place and being like, I think she says something about how she always feels this big fear before embarking on a production, and it doesn't go away. That really stayed with me as this somebody that feels that fear, but kind of going, okay, yeah, it's how how that takes you forward and doesn't kind of hold you back. But Yeah, it's a fantastic book. And also thinking about you talking, it's interesting to hear about this way of playing with the audience, not being threatening. And I think it was just loads of things were coming into my head about those moments in physical fest shows where you have the audience on the stage, so beautiful. And you know, even if it was a bit kind of out there and people put on the spot, I think people felt really held and safe, and it was really communal and lovely. And yeah, I guess that even now, just thinking about it and that kind of liveness and missing that those moments are kind of unique in the moment, aren't they?
And I think, you know, it became quite common that someone who had participated in the show would come up to me after the show and say, God, if you told me I was going to be on stage in front of 300 people tonight, I would have punched you in the face and said, like, no way, that is my worst nightmare. But actually, I had a really nice time. So yeah, I mean, yeah, so special and so joyful and a real celebration. And I think, you know, it's interesting. I think when you go through a process in your head and remember, like, listening to you talk about fear, and for me, I think rather than fear, but maybe I just don't recognize it as fear. I have the sense of like, oh my God, I'm starting another show and I'm just aware of how long it takes and how far, how many cycles, how many you know, I guess another part of my process is I probably create like 10 hours worth of material and then over time edit it down to the hour or 70 minutes or whatever. So I'm a big believer in not editing until the end.
Yeah.
And I think that can be if you make a show that people really like, there can be a tendency to for me to try and reproduce, oh, what they liked last time was this, and that's awful. Because it I guess it's so tense and constrained, and actually I feel like for me what's always been really useful is feeling like the making of the show is a very real live question. So McEnroe was like an experiment in can I mix a kind of confessional with arty visual stuff and clowning and audience participate? Can I mix all those things and create something that, I mean, it wasn't even conscious really. It was like, those were my passions and I was seeing, can they live together?
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh yeah, they can live together. And then I guess, you know, I had also heard this thing, and I'm not sure if it was Grayson Perry or it was someone else who was saying like every piece of art that an artist makes is trying to reproduce a feeling of happiness that they experienced at some point in their lives. And so when it came to my second show, I was really literal, and I was like, well, Beating McEnroe was all about 1980. So what else happened in 1980? And John Lennon got assassinated. And so so I was suddenly like, oh yeah. And so I started kind of remembering I was playing at a friend's house and my mum came to pick me up. And so the show kind of started evolving from there. It started evolving from John Lennon being assassinated. And I guess there's this sense of like, you've got to plant something in order to build something.
Yeah.
And so there's a for me, there's a joy in this kind of just letting my memory, imagination, mind kind of join things up and go, oh, I'd always loved Yoko Ono's book Grapefruit, you know. I think I tried to squeeze it into about 2 other shows and it never got in. And so there's a sense of like, how do these things that I care about, how do they meet? Can they meet?
Yeah.
And like the naked bit in the bag, you know, that when I first thought of that, I was in the National Theatre studio gave me some space to just think about the show, which was amazing. And I just made myself laugh at the idea of turning to the audience and saying, so I just need someone to get naked with me in a bag. Because I just thought, that's brilliant, that'll never happen. But I was interested in the laugh, just the laugh, you know. And then as I was trying it out, you know, I remember someone in Exeter just getting naked with me, and I was totally thrown by it. But I guess there's, you know, I think I'm also, you know, this, I think it was Michelangelo talked about allowing the sculpture to emerge from the big block of marble. And I think I believe that with a show as well, that you kind of, you set your intentions, you get your team of people that you love and trust around you, and then you allow something to emerge, and you can't, and the worst thing is to ever try and make something good because it will be really dull. But I think the kind of what is my real question here?
What is for you, what's the question, do you mean, when you're...
Yeah, like, and I might not even know what the question is, but when I perform that show for the first time, I have got no idea how it will be. Like, I'll keep trying things out with audiences, and I'll keep learning. But the learning is so unconcrete. Like, you're always guessing. I am always guessing. And I am a tree. You know, that basically, I think that started by, I really wanted to make a show called I Am a Tree.
Brilliant. I was going to ask you actually what, you've kind of answered it a bit, but like that initial, I'm interested in this as well, but like that initial idea that you have, that initial where you go, okay, that's it, that's the next thing. How strong and how clear is that, and how, yeah, I guess where does it come from? Obviously, you're just about to say I Am a Tree comes from that idea, and I guess as well, like how much is based on form and content, or do you just kind of think, obviously you've got certain things that are within what you do and what you want to play with?
Well, I think, I mean, Beating Mac, I'd made a big-ish show with a massive set, and quite a big team around, and lots of money and venues, and it had gone really horribly, and it had been the most stressful process, and and it really sent me into a place of going, oh, I don't know if I want to do theatre again.
Why was it stressful, if you can say? Like,
because previously I'd made a show with the same team, and that show had been a massive success.
mm-hmm.
And so when you make a massive success, suddenly the whole industry wants your next big success.
Absolutely, yeah.
And at that point, I'd been making odd theatre for 12 people in a tiny little theatre in London, which, you know, nobody came to, nobody knew anything about it. And I'd been doing that for 10 or 12 years. So when I made this big success, for me, it was all a bit surreal. I kind of went, oh, yeah, wow. Why does everyone think that's really brilliant? Because they haven't seen my really weird shows. I think they're really brilliant. Whereas the other collaborators, it was their first devised show.
Right.
And so the consequence of that meant that when we went into this just making our second show together, the amount of pressure that was all internalized, it was just destructive. It was destructive to the room. It was, you know, what I was saying about not editing. Editing was happening from the first day.
Yeah.
And we hadn't explored anything. So you know, that kind of sense of a room just being full of pressure, and and the pressure being really toxic to creativity, I guess, and play and flow. And so the reason I was telling you that was that I in a way I had this sense of like, either I stop making theatre, or I could work with no one. and just like, so I worked with Ellie because I really trusted her, but also my relationship with her was not as a theatre maker. Mm-hmm. We were just people dicking around in a hospital together, you know, and then, you know, I rather than a massive set, I thought, I'm going to fit all my stuff in a bag, and I'm going to be totally, and I'm going to have a QLab file that I turn up to a venue, and the in-house technician operates it. And so the form kind of emerged from either I give up theatre, right, or I do something really on my own. And then because that went well, I tried another one, and then that went well, and so I made, and then after Ono, because Ono was a total surprise. Like, I didn't know anyone was going to like Ono. I thought it was way too weird. And then I think I came up with the neat idea that I was making a trilogy, you know, because that sounded good, and it's and maybe it was also a way in which I could kind of say, because I spent 10 years kind of making solo shows and touring them, and I was probably like, that was enough. You know, I didn't need, so the trilogy was perhaps also a way of going, you know, that'll do, 3 solo shows, you know, and there's some neat kind of trilogy. There was an awesome moment where I performed the trilogy, and I was going to do a whole tour of the trilogy, just as COVID was hit. But I did manage I managed in Hull and in Bristol. And seeing my posters, all 3 posters together, was so beautiful and so moving, because I could just feel like the amount of work that goes into each show by everybody in the team. And it's I don't know if I've answered your question again. Like, what?
No, it's okay. I mean, I suppose it's just going back to that, like what, I suppose there's lots of factors, isn't there, that come into what your next step is as a creative, as an artist, as a person. I guess that maybe leads on to like what, so following I Am a Tree, which was at Physical Fest, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A few years ago. And that was your last solo show that you made, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe you could talk about like how you felt since then, what your, how your process has changed or will change, or where you're at with that, I guess.
Well, I Am a Tree was really funny, but also like really difficult, a really difficult show to make. And I I don't know how many versions of that show I made in the end. Until it took, brought it to Physical Fest. I thought that was the show. I wasn't totally happy with it. I changed it, took it to Edinburgh, wasn't totally happy with it, changed it after Edinburgh. And I think I finally, but there were some really big changes to that show. And now I'm really proud of it. I think I'm really enjoying helping people make shows at the moment. And I think I currently don't have a desire to get on stage in front of people. I mean, I do a little bit because it's really fun and it's really exciting. I was offered a tour around Spain, and I can't do it because I'm also training as a psychotherapist. But there was a bit of me that was like, because Spanish audiences, they're a bit like Physical Fest audiences. They're so into it and it's so joyful. So, but I had to say no, I can't do that. And so there is a sense of that being part of my life that I'm putting down for a bit. But when I'm helping other people make shows, I think mainly I'm listening to them, but also I spend a lot of time saying, stop trying to make the show. and the difference between trying to make a show and letting something emerge, which turns out to be a show.
And it's so hard that it's so hard to do that, isn't it? Without being held, like if I guess, you were spending a lot of time on your own, working on your own, and were you inviting other people into that process a lot?
Yeah. I never worked on. I tried working on my own for like an afternoon, and I kept like dancing around with a tennis ball on my head, and then just stopping and having a snooze. I can't do anything on my own. Wendy, my partner, like she's directed every show, every solo show, apart from I Am a Tree, but she did end up saving it in the end. And I think it's really important for the person who's been really solid through all my solo shows was my sound designer, Don Kennedy. And I'm working with him on one of the solo shows that I'm helping an artist called Emma Spearing make. And he's just brilliant because he's you know, he's doing his thing, he's making sound, but he's also really fine and able to go, yeah, I think an audience might get a bit lost at this point, or I like that bit, or so he's an amazing collaborator, and I always text him, like after I've performed a show on tour. I always text him and go, "Oh, Dom, thanks for your sound design. So good." And it you know, when you're on stage alone, the sound design for me is like another performer that I'm working with, you know.
Yeah. It's making me think about those people I've had around me, and that trust you build up, and that just I'd always kind of go to musician or the writer, whoever it is that's in the room, like, and they'd be so honest, and there was no worry about feelings. It was like, I felt they understand, they know, they've been there, and it's, those people around are so important. And
I mean, I think to have people that you trust and that they don't even have to be good. like I feel like trusting people and the idea of good comes out of those relationships and that room and that play and that time. So I don't mean that they are not good, but they might not be celebrated as the best this or that in the industry. But your relationship means that they probably are the best for you, you know.
Yeah.
But also, I was thinking about your question about, like, well, how do you start? And for me, it's just got to be something that I am really interested in. So I am a tree. Like, part of what I was so interested in was, me and Wendy had been to India and kept meeting pilgrims. And so I had a chat with a pilgrim one day, and he was saying, yeah, in India, if life gets really difficult, or because of work, family, whatever, you walk a pilgrimage. And you know, and when you walk, you don't take anything, and the villages, the people support you because you are doing their spiritual work for them. And I just thought, well, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, what a great system. Why don't we have that? And I think we possibly used to have it a very long time ago. But I was genuinely interested in, like, in walking and meeting people, and wondering what, you know, where I live. So I think all I'm saying is that I think I used to have a million ideas for different shows that I was going to make at some point, but there's probably going to be one that I'm most interested, feels most present to my life at the moment, and there's a kind of urgency to make it. Yeah.
Do you find it easy to make decisions? Like, you know, when this thing about leaving you know, not trying to make the show too soon, and leaving the process open and not editing, and then I guess at some point you do edit, and I suppose that's come from my I find it very difficult to make decisions, so you know, but I really recognize that. I think when you can be from the outside, which I am a lot, you can kind of give the performers this space to just not have to think about worry about what the show is, and just go for it, and then you can kind of see and help. When I've been in it, it's more difficult.
I mean, I think for me, I just think about Wendy, and I think, you know, I remember with Ono doing like a work in progress, and then then I think we had a baby, which interrupted, my creative process. But I remember, like, I think my head was always creating a show.
Right.
Like there was always a little room in my head where I was nicking stuff from other artists or observing stuff from life and like putting it in the room of the show. And I remembered, I think I totally changed Ono. And then kind of made a bunch of stuff, and Wendy came into the room and was like, what are you doing? You've taken out all the good stuff. And I basically started making a new show. So, having those people around you that go, this is strong, this is less strong. And then, at the end of the day, also having the autonomy to go, I don't like this bit. And we need another bit, because Wendy never liked the sheep bit with the clouds. And luckily someone else found it really funny, but she never found it funny.
Well, you kept it in.
Yeah, because I found it funny. Or I just enjoyed doing it. It felt very, I think there was a bit of me with my shows where I always wanted to be more of an authentic clown.
Right.
I was like, there was a bit of me that was really proud for creating my arty shit. And then there was a bit of me that was like, oh, I wish I was more like a real clown.
Does that mean people laugh, or what's a real clown?
I think it was like a romantic image of a clown in my head. It was a kind of, stripy top, braces, baggy trousers, more kind of, maybe kind of more classical clown. And the cloud bit always felt like, ooh, I'm just being funny, making noises. Yay. Yeah. But it's weird, like your question was about like how my process has changed. And I mean, I think my process has changed so much that I'm not making any shows anymore. But also, like I'm really excited it's really nice. I'm making this audio piece for Physical Fest and Bee Festival. And that it's really nice to think about a piece of work where it's not me and I'm not dragging a bag behind me, and it's not, in a way it's not about me. And I'm enjoying thinking and writing, and I've got no idea how people will receive it. But it feels like my intention. I mean, the story behind it is that when I walked the pilgrimage for I Am a Tree, I recorded hours and hours of audio.
And where did you walk? Where did you walk to and from?
From Coventry in Warwickshire to the Rhondda Valley in South Wales. And it's really because now, like after living in London for 20 years, me and my family moved to Somerset. And I feel like I Am a Tree was really about the move from a metropolis to the countryside. And it's really funny for me listening to the audio and hearing my really city-centric self kind of being quite scared of the countryside.
Right.
and being scared of farmers. And so the audio piece is me and Dom are working on I think it'll be about an hour audio journey that audience members buy the audio, and they download it onto their phone, and then they play it through their headphones, and they walk round whatever city they're in, and they hear, it's a kind of narrative adventure, but the idea is to kind of invite people to see their city that they see every day, possibly to see it in a slightly different light. And to give people permission to take an hour for themselves to go into quite a reflective, peaceful space. That's the hope.
Yeah, it sounds great. And it's great to be able to have you as part of the festival, even if we can't have you here. Yeah, but I think it's, I don't know, I guess there's a need for something different as well, isn't there? That, like, the whole world's been shaken up, hasn't it? And you know, it's given us time to stop and reflect, and I don't know if you feel this, but the permission. So it doesn't have to be the same thing that we did before, or it can't be, or whatever. But
I also think physical fest are very particular in, I think you have courage and trust. You trust your audiences will stay curious and open to, because you work so hard to build those audiences and the relationships. But what feels really unusual and should be really celebrated about Physical Fest is, I feel like you are interested in artists taking risks and trying stuff. And lots of festivals and venues are not interested in someone trying something different. You know, they just want the thing that you've done that is successful.
Yeah, it's been on all the circuits. And but I think, I mean, I guess coming from the artist perspective helps.
Yeah.
Because I found that frustration. It's like, well, let's just see what you do next. But if you really have a relationship with an artist and trust them and you're interested, and it should be about the space for that artist. Rather than let's, which I think that shift has been even greater. I've felt it from an artist's point of view, making work and people not wanting to take risks at all. And being very retrospective, like, well, we liked it when you did this and this and this. And it's like, oh my God, you know, that's what we're trying to, I mean, I can really relate to going, oh, that worked in the last piece. And actually there's a lot of pressure to then do all the things that surround it, like sell the work. And if that space can really be there for people, I think it's so important.
Yeah, and I guess there's, like, it was interesting when I performed the trilogy of shows, like, back to back. It was interesting to perform a show that I'd made 10 years previously. And the reason I'm saying that is, like, COVID has been this massive, abrupt bomb in our lives that has catapulted us all into different spaces of panic and fear, reflection, mourning, all sorts of things. And it's very dramatic. But also, we're all getting older. And so our relationship to art, to being with people, to what we want to share, to what we want to do, it is changing. And I feel like our job as human beings is to keep to stay kind of aware of the change and to if we're lucky enough to be able to change with all of those internal changes, then we have a chance of staying connected to each other and to ourselves. And I think, you know, what's annoying about Can You Just Make the brilliant show that you made last time is it doesn't take that evolution, that natural evolution into account. It wants you back, and I guess that feels like part of our culture, you know, like, can't you just be 25? or you know, there's that idea of like, I don't know if we celebrate aging and all the ways that aging is magnificent.
Yeah. No, I don't think we do. I hope we do soon for us.
Yeah. Well, I celebrate you.
Thank you.
I mean, you're not really getting older, but I am.
I would like to just end by just asking a few like really quick questions.
Okay.
Like, okay, putting you on the spot. Who is your greatest inspiration?
Oh my God. Oh, see, a thing. I'm going to cheat. Like Roy Anderson, amazing filmmaker.
Yeah.
Ache, Russian theatre people. Pina Bausch, Kandinsky, Tingley. Like, Buster Keaton, Jacques Tati.
Nice list.
Thanks.
Okay, where are you most creative?
Just in my own imagination, in my own thoughts, like that kind of space of solitude. And I think I'm actually most, I used to be most creative. I don't know where I'm most creative at the moment. I used to be most creative in quite a busy place where I would sit and just watch people. And I just feel like I was constantly taking notes on like how people are, how people relate, how, yeah, good question. Don't know.
I was just thinking that sometimes I have the best ideas in really boring meetings.
Yeah.
Makes me be stuck in a place, and then my imagination goes into something like, just remind me.
I used to have lots of ideas on my bike.
Nice, yeah. Who or what keeps you going? Big question, but you know.
Well, I don't know if I am keeping going.
Well, you are.
I mean, I'm keeping alive.
Yeah.
Well, at the moment, I'd say I mean, it has to be my partner Wendy and my daughter Murphy, but also I'd say you. I'd say friends who share a similar journey, and that, you know, me and you have reflected a little bit on how insular our bubbles can be, and when I put it like that, it paints a kind of negative connotation, but also those bubbles where you inspire one another. You know, like Tomo inspires me. His joyful exuberance for making shows, you know, and so those people that I guess we reassure each other that art is important.
Yeah. Okay, last one. What's your favorite memory of performing?
Oh,
You don't have to say physical fest, by the way.
Well, yeah. Oh, oh, now so many. I think it has to be. I did Ono in Shanghai, and then so I have a translator on stage with a mic, and she's translating everything I say to the audience, and that's quite fun, and then we do bag piece, and so I just been told by the programmer, there were a couple of people from a massive building in Shanghai, massive theatre, and he'd come in and said, oh, just so you know, we don't think your show will work here, because Chinese people are very reluctant to show themselves. And then the translator said to me, oh, and did you know it's illegal to be naked on stage in China? So these were all as I was going on to the stage to perform my show. And they'd squeezed like 500 people in to this theatre. And anyway, we got to I invite someone from the audience to come on stage and get naked in a bag with me. And, there's always a bit of silence and fidgeting and giggling. And then this young man gets up and he gets inside the bag and we get naked. And the translator is outside the bag, listening into the bag, and translate. And I've said to her, you have to translate everything you hear.
Yeah.
Don't just say what you think is important. And we got to, and I asked the person in the bag about love, and he said, yes, I've been in love with someone for 6 months, but they don't love me. And then there was a kind of mix up in translation where I asked him if he could say their name, but the translator used she. Could he say her name? And he said, actually, it's not a woman. And outside the audience, there was this tremendous kind of, ooh. And so in that moment, I'm thinking, well, I don't know. It might be illegal to be gay in China. I don't know what it is. So he started to, I asked him about how it is to be gay in China for him. And he started to cry and talk about the fear he's experienced his whole life. And I said to him, I said, well, I'm sure that tonight everyone here in this theatre will agree that you are the bravest person here. And when you leave this bag, I think this audience are going to applaud you for your courage. Thank you so much for sharing. At which point the audience stood up. They went absolutely crazy and they lifted this young man to his seat.
Wow, amazing. And
he just stayed in the theatre. After the show, he just stayed in the theatre. And I didn't know if that was because he was scared or, so and it wasn't. It was just such a powerful moment. And when I asked people if it was illegal to be gay in China, what they said was, it's not illegal, but you never tell anyone.
Mm-hmm.
you know, even as I'm telling you that and I'm remembering it, I'm like, what a lot of feelings, you know, to be evoked in a moment.
Yeah. It's, what a beautiful moment to be part of there. And that's an amazing answer. It's like, I'm crying. Very nice. Thank you so much.
Total pleasure.
We'll be eagerly anticipating listening to your audio.
Oh yeah, let me know how it goes. Hope it works. I keep imagining Liverpool and walking around Liverpool.
Yeah.
Where you might be. Yeah. Thanks, Ellie.